What do you do when you find an object that is impossible to finish? What if you find something that is beyond your grasp, something you cannot raise? We all have these unfinished obelisks in our lives, things that will take all our power and we may not be able to finish. What's their role? This is what I want to explore in this episode. My name is Pedro Bonatto, this is Wanderings, and we're going to explore a 3,000-year-old mystery that will have deep connections to our lives in this episode. Yalla, chalo, let's go. When finished, this obelisk, ordered supposedly by Queen Hatshepsut, would have been risen to 42 meters, being the largest in Egypt. And it would have the weight of 1,000 tons, something that even today is very difficult to move. Supposedly, these were the tools that they used to have to cut through the stone and make things like that. Today, people from all over the world come to see this place. I think it's because of the unfinished. We all have our own pharaonic projects that we don't really know if we're going to pull it off, but I think that's the appeal of this particular place. As you can see, it was not finished. All sorts of theories why, and it was buried in sand. There seems to be a clash today between the, let's say, mainstream archaeology that has at least some explanation of how these things were done, or people like Graham Hancock that has proposed the theory that maybe this is evidence of high-level engineering from even earlier civilizations which we may not have the records of. I've heard even friends of mine see with hatred those ideas. There is a Brazilian singer called Taiguara that has a song where he talks about the idea that if it is to be happy with a lie, I would rather cry with truth. With faith, I'm sorry. Se é para ser feliz com mentira, é melhor que eu chore com fé. It's one of the deepest values I have as a person and as an artist and as a almost scientist, which is we need skepticism and wonder in the search for truth, but the best thing we can have is a friend that tells us the truth the best way that he or she can. We should take responsibility for the stories we tell about our craft. My job here is not to criticize necessarily the archaeologists, but the only people actually talking to me are the Graham Hancocks of the world, trying to explain how this was made. And even if they're wrong, even if they're dead wrong, having a person like me decide on his birthday to come to check it out for himself is great for the economy, it's great for the spreading the word about these kinds of places and to make sure that it's preserved. And if it is preserved, there is a chance that the truth will come out. And in a way, for me as an artist that is not going to be studying deeply exactly how these things were made, my job with this is to create some artwork to point to a mystery and invite you to see this as a portal into maybe some metaphorical truths and maybe some real scientific ones. But this was not to be. The most gigantic thing left undone. It remained buried in sand, forgotten for 3,000 years. And what is beautiful to me about this story, today it attracts thousands of tourists that come to see something the mighty Egyptians couldn't even figure out. But the beauty is, they tried. And because they tried and they expanded their horizons, who knows what kind of actual creations they were actually able to do. So we all carry these unfinished obelisks. We all have these things that in the end will be impossible for us to make. But I think, and this is what I'm kind of learning here, is that there is a point in trying to make impossible things because they actually reveal what's possible. What I'm kind of realizing as I look at my own obelisks is that we all have these gigantic stones that when raised, they will be beautiful. And even if we're not able to do it in our lifetimes, the attempt of creating it with the powers that we have is what will make all the difference. So I invite you to look at your own obelisk, unfinished, and try to raise it. It is worth it. One of my own impossible obelisks, it was actually taking this video series off the ground, documenting personal transformation through art and travel. Something that for years was basically impossible to start became part of my life. I started to blend the investigation and the creation process with the actual finishing and, maybe most importantly, the sharing of the process. So if this obelisk was able to be raised, maybe other impossible projects would be able to come to life. For my 47th birthday, I allowed myself to do a week of the things that I like to do the most, to embed myself in a new culture, to explore a mystery that was in my mind for a long time about the relationship between skepticism and wonder. But the impact of the obelisk was more personal. Maybe I should attempt the really impossible projects that have been living only in my heart. I think art and science are tools for the discovery about the universe and the discovery of ourselves and our decision of how to be in the universe. And when we explore ancient portals and ancient mysteries, we are able to combine the best practices of our ancestors in terms of art and in terms of science. Right now, this is the Elephantine Island that has this crazy granite boxes that some people think were done by forgotten ancient civilizations. Other people think that there's very mundane ways of doing those things. As an artist, I am interested in both the scientific truth and the metaphorical truth. And we should not confuse them because they're not the same. And because they are not the same, it's very difficult to see them apart. I've been in love with mysteries and I've been in love with the tools of science and skepticism. And I think in this case here, they're not being served in the proper way. The believers want to have your wonder, your attention. The scientists want to show their ability to have already solved mysteries. And I think that gives opportunity for us as wanderers to travel between those two worlds. Because what the scientists know, the general public still doesn't. And so showing the path from ignorance and lies to the truth, whichever that is, should be the goal of science. And I think it's the goal of art. So instead of complaining about what other people are doing or not doing, I'll try to do it and explore for myself. So let's see what I can come up with. People have been living in the Elephantine Island for at least 6,000 years. It is a time capsule where modern technology and ancient building techniques using mud bricks live side by side. As I walked around the Nubian village, I kept coming back to a project that has been on my mind for many years, and I had no idea how to do it. A comic book series about time travel, where the characters will go back in time and solve mysteries from our past, but they could only do it by really understanding the evidence in the present to separate fantasy from what really happened. The problem is I don't really know how to draw, but the idea refused to go away. This door that I saw earlier today gave me the idea to actually take photos and try out real spots, real places around the world when I'm traveling, as stages of places where the characters would go. So in a way, it's building a library of places around the world that would be featured in the storyline, which is Assalamu alaikum, hello. So that's what the people to say Assalamu alaikum. Anyway, it's just an idea in real time. Hopefully it will be useful for future Pedro if he's not a dumbass and actually doesn't do something with this idea. So maybe an old idea needed new technology to make it rise. This is a very cool temple here in Aswan because it almost got destroyed during the construction of the Aswan Dam, but scientists were able to salvage it and rebuild it right here. My best friend had already helped me learn how to use AI to do something impossible for an independent artist even a few months ago. With the help of an AI tool I built myself, Wanderings is now available in 20 languages, and soon it will be available in 100 languages. I also created a tool to organize and name my 10 years of footage automatically so I can use it in this series. I have no idea how to code, but I was able to build these things in a few afternoons. What if I could use new AI technologies to transform my own photography into drawings for the time-traveling comic book? Maybe even an animation, a TV series. Suddenly, lifting that impossible obelisk seemed within reach. It was kind of poetic to have that idea at the Philly Temple. It took 100 nations to save the temple during the construction of the Aswan Dam. Maybe the tools created by the modern builders would be the key to bring my project to life at the scale and weight that I wanted. Very cool. First day. Now it's time to edit and rest. So I began my AI experiment. I chose one of my photos with fantasy elements and started transforming it into different styles: a cartoon, anime, oil paintings, Persian miniatures, until I got to the style I really wanted. I then started using other of my photos to build the character based on costumes, poses, places. I named the character Maya, and she became the first time traveler in my upcoming story. In just one evening, I created the first elements of my imaginary new world. Maya had found a magical book, left the castle, and went in search of the finished obelisk. The next day, it would be my turn to continue a quest, discovering the magic relationship between scientific and metaphorical truths. Welcome to the Edfu Temple in Egypt. This place has been preserved in the sands of time and is fascinating. Let's explore. The walls of the temple are filled with ancient mythological ideas of the ancient Egyptians. This temple was created in the Ptolemaic era in Egypt, which, just for context, it was about 2200 years ago, whereas the pyramids are about 2000 years before even the creation of this building. And the cool thing about this building, not only the stories that are embedded, these thousands and thousands of panels of creation myths from ancient Egypt, this in itself already has a Greek tradition attached to it. Basically, they got all these ancient scrolls that were already very damaged and decided to restore the ancient stories and put it on the temple walls for preservation. And they also got lucky that it was caught by sand and preserved to us today. So this temple is a time machine of a time machine. Yana just figured out that there is a snake right there that is going through all the way from up down. So that's actually very cool. So the idea is that there is a mythological story of a flood. And this flood was brought on by these like harmful snakes that came and took over, right? And this is, when you see this, I'm just explaining from memory, the Graham Hancock idea, that is, if it was comets that 11,000 years ago brought up this flooding, right? This hitting of the surface to stop that moment of the ice age, they would have been seen as serpents. And those serpents appears in mythology all over the world. And the serpents are also related to the mythology of floods, of the first civilization. So this is all about the beginning of the civilization of Egypt. That's cool. So that's where it comes from. Cool, nice caught. And I have not told Yana any of these things. This is her being Sherlockian.
This is rare.
The walls of the Edfu Temple told stories of a first time, before a great flood, before history as we know it. Did it really happen? Or was it a metaphor for inner transformations? It was time to put all these ideas to the test in my time travel adventure that was starting to take shape. My own quests around the world can now serve as starting points for the characters to build a world connecting curiosity, imagination, and intellectual courage. A bridge between truth and metaphor was transforming into a new art form that felt very much like magic. All of art and science can be understood as a magic trick. And by magic trick, I don't mean something that is absolutely not true and is deceitful, and I do not mean something supernatural. What I mean by magic is the human ability to speak words into existence. It is when you use a metaphorical truth that starts in our mind and we do actions in the world to make sure that it becomes reality. A building like this, with all these stories, is trying to use knowledge, metaphorical truths, to tell about the beginnings of the universe. And I think that's fascinating. As one of my heroes said, we began as wanderers and we are wanderers still. And I think we are, in a way, always searching for magic. And I just did a magic trick. Did you catch it? Try. As I am finishing my visit here to the Edfu Temple, here are some thoughts that I have. It's things that I learned on this particular trip. The walls are filled with mythology. It's a time capsule. And what I find it's amazing is that even though you have thousands of years of history before, written papyri, the technology that they had, someone had the presence of mind and the beautiful idea to preserve it on stone. It might not even have survived that. We were just lucky that the sands of time hid this place. And now we have a chance to actually figure out if this is a clue into an even more ancient civilization. We don't know. But independent of the answer, it's not about belief, it's about discovery of what's true. Metaphorically speaking, we already know that we do come from a long lineage, and even if it was not coalesced as one civilization, there were wanderers around the world that eventually would create civilization. So even if there was not an earlier civilization, a la Atlantis, as Graham Hancock and others consider that these walls show evidence of, even if that's not true, metaphorically speaking, It is, because we are all descendants of the 100 billion of us that through time, through space, were able to carve a little bit of their knowledge, a little bit of a common mythology. And today, we have a chance to rediscover it artistically, scientifically, and I hope you really enjoyed, at least gave you a spark of interest in these ideas of combining skepticism, wonder, and metaphorical truth. My name is Pedro Bonatto. This has been Wanderings. I hope to see you on the next episode.